You're not going to believe this, my friends. The Acolyte is not the show you think it is. Because the original version, which was 2 or 3 seasons long, had the most insane Sith twist. That's what we're talking about today. So over the last week or so, interspersed with my usual content, Star Wars updates, breaking news, that kind of thing, I've also dipped a toe here and there into the Acolyte visual guide. And as I've already told you, while I wasn't the biggest fan of the show, this book is pretty in-depth and has some pretty darn awesome reveals. I'll be the first to say it. It makes you wonder what could have been. But while I was reading it, I can't believe I overlooked the most insane retcon. And it concerns the Stranger, the man who we call Qimir, played by Manny Jacinto, and we don't actually know his real name. Leslye Headland said Season 2 would have been the place we would have learnt some more information about him. The show was cancelled, so we'll never know what was in store for Seasons 2 and 3. But what we now know is that Qimir isn't who we think he is. In light of the cancellation, they've changed who the character is, because the visual guide contradicts comments made by Leslye herself. So let me guide you through it. The most insane cameo of the entire season. There was Yoda right at the end, but before that, we saw Darth Plagueis. It was confirmed to be Plagueis, even if this book calls him the Lurker in the Dark. And he was watching Qimir and Osha, and even during the press tour before the Acolyte came out, Leslye said, 100 years before the Phantom Menace following in the line of Bane, there is a hierarchy of Sith, the famous rule of 2, the Master and the Apprentice. But drawing from the expanded universe, the Apprentice is allowed to have many Acolytes. And so, in the context of the show, we thought to ourselves, well then Darth Plagueis must be the Master, Qimir the Apprentice, May one of his Acolytes, and then in the end, Osha. Then there were those who said, no, Darth Tenebrous is the Master, Plagueis the Apprentice, and both Qimir and May were Acolytes. But Leslye debunked this. She made it clear that by this point, Plagueis has already killed his Master, just like the start of the James Luceno book. So Qimir is the Apprentice. But this is where the visual guide starts to muddy the waters. The idea that Plagueis is linked to Qimir and is his master might have been a late canon retcon, might have been Leslye Headland's explanation when she found out it wasn't getting a season 2. Because the visual guide implies in the original version where there were multiple seasons, Plagueis and Qimir are separate. They're not working together. Darth Plagueis is the Sith. We don't know if Darth Tenebrous is still around, but Plagueis is a fully fledged Sith. But the guide suggests Qimir isn't a fully fledged Sith. They imply he might be a pretender, having learnt about the Sith and maybe wanting to get their attention. So the reason Plagueis is lurking in the shadows isn't because he's watching his apprentice, it's because he's learnt that someone is impersonating the lineage of the Sith. That, my friends, changes everything, every assumption we had about the show. Leslye Headland saying, yes, they're related, Plagueis is the Master, Qimir is the Apprentice. That might have been done retrospectively to make the single season work, because originally when there were multiple seasons, they were going to explain the true nature of Qimir further, and the dynamic between him and the mysterious Plagueis. Maybe Plagueis finds out there's an impersonator, and they fight, and he kills him. This reveal comes in a small paragraph titled Shadowed Legacy. The Stranger represents a disturbing throwback to a menace long believed extinct. He proclaims himself of the long-dead Sith legacy, popularly believed to have been conquered centuries earlier. His skills are indisputable, but whether he is the true heir to the Sith is a mystery no one will survive to solve, if he has any say in the matter. It's entirely possible he's a pretender to that lineage. So there you have it, my dear friends. This just opened the door to so many possibilities, and so many questions that we have rewatching Season 1. And I think one of the biggest hints that Qimir is not all he's made out to be, but certainly powerful, is that he was once Venestra Rose Padawan. And so, he might just be a rogue former Jedi who's obsessed with the Sith. The question is, does he know Darth Plagueis exists? Is he aware that the Sith are really out there and aware of him? He might assume, like the Jedi Order did, that the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. He might think to himself, there's nothing to worry about, I can pretend to be one of them and instill fear in the Jedi. Following the Sith philosophy, following the Sith code, but not really being part of it. So imagine how incredible a showdown between him and Darth Plagueis could look. He certainly knows his stuff, obsessed with cortosis, using dirty lightsaber tricks like Tricata, and acting very cruel and inhumane, leaning into his passions rather than the rules, which he associates with the Jedi. Remember his quote, I don't make the rules, the Jedi do, and the Jedi say I can't exist. They see my face, they all die. So while the retcon version makes sense, that Darth Plagueis is his master, the original version where he's not a true Sith, and Plagueis is out to get him, is an even better twist, probably the most insane twist we've had for the entire show. Another really cool reveal in this guide is the in-depth description of the slaughter on Khofar. It says, although the Sith's lightsaber skills are underpinned by an unmistakable foundation of the Jedi arts, they are distorted by an unpredictable energy that unbalances the knights. So focused is the stranger's intense rage that it confounds their defenses. He lunges directly into the enemy strikes to disrupt their lightsaber blades, and the Jedi are not prepared to defend such attacks. And so, here's what I'm wondering. If Darth Plagueis is still the apprentice of Darth Tenebrous, I'm talking about in the original script, if Plagueis is recruiting other acolytes, Qimir should be at the top of his list. It's why some fans think the stranger could be Darth Venomous. But it should also be noted in the section titled Dark Designs, Qimir seems to want to forge his own Sith legacy. So this conflict between different dark side Force users, if there were to be a season 2, could be the most intriguing thing about this show. And now it's making me think we really need a separate Darth Plagueis series. If they want to renew this for a season 2, I'm sorry Leslye Headland, but it's got to be given to someone else. But it's a huge twist, and much of the way this guide has been written assumes there is going to be a season 2. Another example is the fate of Mother Coral, the wife of Mother Anastasia, one of the mothers of the twins. She disappeared into midair the night of the disaster on Brendok, and Leslye Headland teased there were more plans for her. She said something to the effect of, if you can work out where she's from, her species, you can figure out where she went. And because she's a Zabrak witch, I think most of us assumed she returned to Dathomir. Some of the coolest concepts for this show were left out, or like I said, would have been explored in a future season. I think there's potential for a lot of this, but if they do want to do more of these characters, they should do it in a different setting. The structure for the debut season was a bit all over the place, but there were certainly more plans for the likes of Qimir and Coral. Now, one of the reasons this would have been pretty darn fascinating is that the Night Sisters, at least in the expanded universe, really didn't like other Force witches. They saw them as a threat, impersonators, ones who seek the Night Sister wisdom and power, but can never attain it. So what about someone like Coral, who might be related to Night Sisters? The book says she was adopted on Brendok, so she might originally be a Dathomirian Zabrak, but was handed over to a different witch coven. That means if she returns to Dathomir, given the Brendok witches died, there might be some interesting tensions between the two cults. But what do you guys think? Share your thoughts on these reveals in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.